With Gia Zhang here at the Hmong Community Garden now. This is part of our two-series program on the Horticultural Therapeutic Community Gardens. And thanks for being on the Valley today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And how long have you been involved with this program?
Well, this program here, we just started this year, but we have the community garden in other places. So this is like our third year going on.
But the Hmong have always been strong in gardening. They brought a lot of that with them when they were refugees coming over here.
Yes. Hmong is an agriculture-based culture and society, and the things that they learn are passed on orally from one generation to another generations. And what they do is they teach when a certain crop's supposed to be grown, and what kind of organic stuff you can use on your land to help your vegetable grow. And that's what they do traditionally. And so once they come over here, basically that's one of the skills they bring over. And that's one of the reasons why Central Valley is home to so many Hmong.
And great ground here to grow. You've got a lot of ground, whereas back in your old home country, there wasn't as much land available as there is here.
Well, in terms of land, I think back home, in the beginning, there are plenty of land for a lot of the Hmong people to farm. But then the government didn't like the slash and burn style because it was destroying a lot of forests.
Yeah.
And so now, yes, they are limited, compared to now and then. But they come here to America, they come here to the Central Valley, and yes, there is a lot of land that many of them come over and utilize the skill to farm a lot of specialty crops.
I can imagine that the younger generation in the Hmong community has assimilated well, but probably a lot of the older folks that came over, they probably had a large culture shock.
Yes. One of the analogies that I always share with the community is, you come from sort of like a 10th century living style, and overnight flight to America, you're like into the 21st century.
Yeah.
So to a lot of them, that's culture shock, and many of the elders have harder time to really adjust. And that's where one of the issue of mental health comes about, is because overnight you're going from 10th century lifestyle to a 21st century, and you have to adapt. And so many of these elders, it's hard for them to adapt. So they have so many barriers, they have so many challenges. So that affect them mentally. Not only were they traumatized during the Vietnam War, but they were culture shock and traumatized just being here and having to learn to adapt to everything over. And so many of them begin to have sadness, depression, and many of them become very suicidal. And so having a garden like this gives them the opportunity, provide them resources where they can go have help, or actually a place for them to just be and make friends and see things that they're familiar with.
In the Hmong community, you see a lot of them professionally gardening for their livelihood, but to see this as a community garden, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, many of them that come here, they all cannot be farmers, because they have families and they have children to raise. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't go out and do something. Many of them are limited by a little backyard that they have, and so many of them say, it's not really enough for me, and I want to do something more than just a little backyard here. And so that's where this whole idea of helping them with their mental health, but at the same time bringing something for them to do. Because like I said, with a lot of our clients, we can't recommend them to go see a movie or go to the park or something like that.
And to some of the elders, it would be foreign to them anyway to go do that. So this is as close to your home country culture as is possible.
Yes.
Considering they're in California.
Yes. And I think that's why California is home to the largest Southeast Asians, because many of them can adapt and make this their home through the agriculture land that's here.
Now that things have settled down in Laos, are some going back, some that have immigrated here, have some gone back to that country?
No, not really. A lot of the elders, once they came here, they have the hope, the dream that they could eventually go back. But eventually they realize that, their children are acculturated. This now becomes more of their home, and going back actually is sort of like, it's getting hopeless more.
Yeah.
There's nothing for them back there. Many of their homes or their village are now just jungle and taken by other ethnic groups, and so they're just trying to make this their new home.
So the freedom here is what has been able to keep them as a cohesive culture, I
Yeah.
can imagine.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that, for them to be able to come here and feel free to, still do many of the things that they do, and at the same time learning, what they can and cannot do here in the United States.
How was it that the county partnered with you? When did that come about?
Well, earlier there are many gardens out in the communities, and one incident that gave rise to this whole idea was when the police station on Belmont, they wanted to take over that community garden to build a station. And many of the parents there say, this is something that is helping us that we wanted to do. And so that kind of gave rise to a lot of what we're doing here, because we felt that, many of the parents, they lose a sense of who they are, a meaning, and to take that away from them, it's like taking something that they own. And so when this opportunity of providing something that is innovative, that is new, but at the same time is helping them with their mental health, so that's how we thought that this could be a great partnership with the county with this new idea of creating new ways of helping people.
So along with gardening, you also have meetings in the building, and they talk about their problems. And so they have, is the Hmong community, are they naturally open to talking about their problems, or are they more closed?
Really, they're not. They're really
Yeah.
closed. They like to keep issues between themselves and the family. And that's where I think the real problem is. It's not being able to have a place or somebody to go to. And so once you have problems built up and you try to contain it within yourself or within your family, then that's when all this depression, all this anxiety comes about. And so having a shelter, having a neutral place where they can come in and they can talk and find out resources, it's really a new way for them to really solve their own problem.
How many people are participating in the Hmong community in this garden project?
This garden, we have over 60 gardeners here who are participating, and many of them actually come out of being in therapy. So they go from therapy to rehab activity to the gardening.
So this is where they're maybe feeling a little better about things, and they can finally come here and they work a little, and then they can talk about their problems.
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
they couldn't before. They kind of had to be re-educated about
Yes.
what they can talk about. They were probably didn't want to talk about
Yeah.
it.
So many of these people who are on the garden are more stabilized with their anxiety, with depression. We work with them initially when they're mild to moderate depression. We, educate them about all these signs and symptoms, all the different resources. And then once they're stabilized, we slowly, gradually move them out, into programs like this. And then eventually they can help themselves.
In the beginning, when Fresno County approached your community, what did the elders think? Were they resistant at first?
Yeah, initially, building trust and having to say, well, are they for real? They're coming out and they're saying this and saying that and saying this and saying that. We want to make sure that, they're telling us the truth.
Right.
And trust with government agency for the Southeast Asian population has always been the issue, because they have come from a country where they've been oppressed. And so once they come here and you have a government agent saying this and this, you are very cautious about it until they realize that there are partner agency like Fresno Center or many other nonprofit that could act as a bridge to help them make that connections and bring that into, reality. And so when you see the partnership and then we bring project like this to it, then they begin to say, oh yeah, we're beginning to see that, the result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the only community outreach garden in the Hmong population?
No, there are a number of other gardens as well. Besides this one, we have other partners like Fern and the Subak garden that you threw. And then there are other Slavic and other.
That's what Karen was mentioning,
yeah,
that there's
yeah.
a Slavic Russian element too, which I wouldn't have suspected.
So it's a very diverse.
Yeah.
It's very diverse, and this is just one of many communal gardens. And then besides funded community garden like this, there are other church organizations that work with their own refugee constituents to have little garden in their church to help them as well.
You were born in the old country, right?
Yes, I was born in Laos.
So you've probably seen the changes in your own culture as they come to California, and I think they're in Minnesota too, aren't they? Hmongs are in Minnesota.
Yes.
And as they become more Americanized, you can probably see your own culture change a little bit. But I bet they're still holding on to the language and a lot of the traditions.
Yeah, and one of the tradition, of course, is like, garden like this.
Yeah.
And so they may change their names once they become citizen. They may work, they may be driving, they may be wearing American clothes.
Right.
But yet, gardening is always still a part of them.
Yeah.
And so, they're always going to do something like this.
It was very interesting that you mentioned the trust factor, because the Punjabis also mentioned the same thing, that they had trust issues with community leaders here in California.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think that's something that a lot of our people have gone through, and they're traumatized. During the Vietnam War, during the refugee camps, and so once they come to the United States, they want to be cautious about it as well too.
Yeah. Very nice. You've got some good soil here, and you've got a lot of different types of plants here. And tell us a little bit about this garden. Yeah.
Well, this garden, like I said, it's farmed by about 60 gardeners, each growing certain specialty crops that they like. We just finished with the corn, but we also have pepper, traditional cucumbers, and then we also have some herbs and eggplants that they farm. And also what we're trying to do is figure out what grows best during the season, because of course water is a shortage issue, and what we want to do is be able to conserve that and farm crops that doesn't use a lot of water. Yeah.
So a person that comes into this program, how does it start for them?
Most of them either graduate through our programs where they gone through the psychotherapy and rehab, and we know that they needed something to do before they actually transition into the mainstream. And so they usually come out of that, or what we usually do is have model work through some of those participants and say, we have a free garden if you want to do, but one of the things what we like you to do is to come in and then learn about our process first. And so one, through our program. Two, we have the community come in and say, I'm interested in gardening because I have one, but I need a little bit more to farm for my family, so I can have some to feed my family at home.
In some cultures, the men are the ones that are gardeners, but in this culture, it's heavily female.
Yes, yes. Actually, I would say about 95% of our gardeners here are female. We have some guys that come out to help the wife, or that actually say, yeah, I want 3 rows of it. And so, yeah.
So are all the gardeners individually responsible for a certain part of the garden, their own rows?
Yes, we have 3 rows per individual, and so they're responsible for taking care of those 3 rows, and whatever they want to plant in those 3 rows is really up to them. Then we have a main gardener that actually make sure that there's plenty of water that are coming to those rows to make sure that the crops will survive the heat.
Yeah, in the Central Valley, I can imagine that you have to have people here every day.
Yes.
Every day. Yeah. To not only water, but also to make sure that every plant's... And you've got this great drip system, too.
Yeah.
And you guys are really stepped up here.
Yeah,
it's not flood irrigation.
No, before we did the flooding, and we figured that just wastes too much water.
Right.
And what we want to do is realize the problem with the water issue in the valley, and what we're going to do is be more economical. And also at the same time, educate these refugees into a new way of farming using irrigation systems, so that they can see the difference rather than just this traditional irrigating the land.
How are the Hmong generation that's been born in this country, how are they looking at things, and how are they assimilating into the culture, being rooted in a Hmong family, but also being Americanized because they've been born here and they've gone to the schools here and all that?
I think for the younger folks to look at, their parents, they said the parents work very hard.
Yeah.
You know, to always be out 6 o'clock and then come back like 6 at night, just working on the farm. And for them, they say, you know, the reason why I'm going to school is because I don't want to work hard
Right.
like my parents.
Yeah.
Even though the parents do not speak English, they become an example. I said, I want you to go to school. I don't want you to work hard in the field like myself, because that's not gonna feed the family. So we want you to go to school and we'll work in the farm, because that's what we're accustomed to. That's what we're cultured or assimilate to doing. But you know, maybe not you younger folks who are born in the United States. And
So they're embracing our education system?
Yes, they are
That's
embracing
excellent.
that. Yep.
A lot of them are becoming engineers and doctors
engineers
now.
and doctors. Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old were you when you came to this country?
I came here when I was about 9 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I spent most of my life here in the United States, learning the culture, speaking the language, and going to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. So how you cycled 60 people through here, but this is a fairly, for the county, this is one of the newer programs that they've reached out to. The Hmong has just basically come on board in the last year or so,
Yes,
right?
yes. I think we're going in our second phase. We just finished with the first phase with the gardening. So the gardening will continue for another phase to really be able to help more people. And we're hoping that we will be able to get other community to also kind of take a look at this and be involved. So I know that the county is opening its door to say, what are other culture that you want to garner? Because we know that with certain culture, it's a benefit to them.
Yes.
But we want to invite other cultures as well to come in, because we do have, you know, funding available, and we want to make sure that all unserved community have access to that.
Yeah.
And this is all about access as well too,
Right.
and making sure that underserved community are able to access services and resources that will benefit the whole community.
Will there be a day when Hmong and Punjabi and the Slavic Russians and all of these will have a garden together?
And I think that ultimately that could be one of the outcome, and I think we already beginning to do that.
Right.
You know, when we have events, we actually call all these different partners and different communities, bring it together. A couple of weeks ago, we actually had a gathering, and all of the different partner agency and all the different communities brought food here, and we did a potluck here.
Wow, that's
so
great.
It's a very good beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately that would be, you know, the goal is to be able to say, regardless of what culture you're from, what country you're from, that we can all come and garden and share our experience and skill with each other.
You know, that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is. I was looking at the statistics, and from the people polled that are going through this program, and there's just a really high percentage rate of people that said that this has definitely helped them help their mental state, and help them assimilate into this American culture, and you know, they really feel good about the whole thing.
Hey, like I said, when you think about, you know, coming to a country where you don't speak the language, where you cannot drive, and you have so many barriers,
Yeah.
you know, and the only thing that out there for you is something that, you know, you can connect to, you know, that just makes you feel so good. You know, just like with you going to any country, you're always looking for somebody that looks like you, and when you find that person, when you find somebody who is also like, you know, from America, you go, hey, how are you?
Yeah, right.
And you feel so good.
Yeah.
And I think to be able to have a resource or a service like this for them that they can connect, it makes them feel
Yeah.
good.
Well, it's fantastic to see the Hmong community assimilate so well into our culture, into the American culture. You know, you have your festivities, that you get together once a year, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think that's what make the Hmong culture so unique. I mean, from China to Laos to Thailand to America, it's all about adapting. You know, and I think that that's also part of our past that we have to do in order to survive. And when you are a group of people that have no country, and you just go from one country to another country, you have to have that ability to adapt.
Yeah. And this is the home country now.
Yeah.
You won't have to move to any other countries.
No. And
this is it.
Yeah, and then one of the great things that I always say to people, and I say, you're already in a country, and they don't believe me, and I say, you watch when the great General Van Pelt passed away, what flag is on his casket. You know, the flag that was on his casket represent the homeland that he takes you to. And today is America. And I guess then people begin to realize, and then they say, yeah, he has brought us to his homeland, to our new homeland.
Referencing Vang Pao, he was the George Washington of your country, of your countrymen.
Yeah. And so that's the reason why now a lot of adults begin to realize that America is their country. Becoming American, going out to vote, becoming a part of this beautiful
so a lot of them at first probably thought that they would probably be in a transient state the rest of their lives, and now they're starting to realize that that this is it, and they've arrived and they don't have to move again. How wonderful. Well, this garden is fantastic. It's just, you know, it's all very nicely laid out. We got somebody working back there now. And what's some of your favorite vegetables?
Well, I like the eggplants.
You like eggplants?
I like, because of eggplants, you can either just grill them, or you can actually crush them, and you can put into so many dishes. And then sometimes I like some of the bitter melon that they have here. And it's also good in terms of putting in different fruit and making it into soup. It's also very healthy.
I can imagine that just everybody is so happy to be able to have a little patch of ground that that they can grow something in. Are there things that they're growing now that they didn't grow back in Laos?
You know, they're trying some of the corns. They used to form the smaller corn that aren't as tall and aren't as big, but then they come into the United States and you see these bigger corn with, and so they're trying some of that, and they're trying other crops as well too.
Wow, very interesting. And what else are you growing here? I've noticed that you've got peppers. And these are pretty hot peppers, aren't they?
These are very hot peppers. And one of the things we have some of the gardeners doing is they're trying to grow some herbs that they have. And those herbs are supposed to be very good for a lot of chronic illnesses, a lot of body aches and stuff like that. And so they try to grow here as well.
Yeah, because in your culture, I think it's the holistic approach to medicine. It's the herbal approach. Yeah. How very fascinating. We are almost out of time. Do you have any last thoughts before we close out this segment?
I want to thank you for coming and visiting you know, this community and also our garden. I also want to know that, you know, in terms of helping people, there are so many different ways, and it's just not one way. And, you know, with the work what the county is doing is saying, you know, let's work with the culture rather than having the culture just go from one way and this is the way.
And I thought that was a bright touch, you know, that they're going to go, well, let's not force the culture, let's let the culture do what they want, and that way we can help them. How clever. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for visiting us.
And this is fantastic. We're out of time. This is The Valley Today, and The Valley Today is a public service presentation of this great TV station. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. For more information on the Horticultural Therapy Community Centers, contact Janelle Sidney at 600-6831 or email her at jsidney@co.fresno.ca.us.